This Saturday is UFC Fight Night Saudi Arabia, Robert Whittaker versus Ikram Aliskerov, and this is going to be my full card predictions. And I know it's disappointing. It was originally supposed to be Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev, and unfortunately Khamzat Chimaev pulled out a couple days ago with an illness. But this is still a banger card. The UFC really stacked this card, and I really think there's a bunch of incredible fights on the prelims as well as the main card. And I think the UFC really put together the best main event they could on about a week's notice. So I still think the main event's highly compelling. Now, the first fight on the card, we have a road to the UFC final, Long Xiao versus Chang Ho Lee. I spent like an hour looking up fight footage for these guys because it was impossible to find. I had to go to Fight Pass, and then you couldn't find them via search. So then I had to go to each individual road to the UFC and figure out exactly what episode they were on and then watch it. But the conclusion that I came to is neither one of these guys is particularly great. And Chang Ho Lee, in his last fight against a guy's name that I cannot pronounce, got dominated and somehow came back and won in the third round because the other guy got tired, got out-grappled, and got beat up, and then came back in the third round because the other guy got exhausted. He wants to grapple. Chang Ho Lee apparently says he wants to be, like a Korean Khabib. He did not show me that in his last fight. Now, Long Xiao has decent striking. He has okay grappling. He does get taken down and controlled a little bit, but I think he has decent BJJ, decent scrambles, and I think he's the better fighter. Watching both these guys, I think that Long Xiao is the better fighter, so I'm going to pick him to win via decision. I think Lee's going to come out and try to grapple nonstop. I think he'll have a little bit of success, but I don't think he'll do a lot of damage. And also, I don't think his grappling's that dominant. I don't think his clinch work's that dominant. I don't think he's that strong. I think just from looking at him and their each individual fights, I think that Long Xiao is going to be the bigger fighter here. So I think he's going to be able to stuff off some of the takedowns. I think if he does get taken down, he'll be able to scramble back to his feet. He's athletic, he's fast, and I think he definitely has the better striking. So I'm going to pick Long Xiao to win via decision, maybe like a 29-28 decision. I think it should overall be a fun fight, but I don't think either guy is like a top-level guy or ever will be a top-level guy, but they're both, I guess not really. I was going to say they're both relatively young, but Chang Ho Lee is 30 years old. Long Xiao is 26, so he's still decently young. But either way, I think it'll be a fun fight. I think Xiao gets it done via decision. Moving up on the card, well, originally it was supposed to be Cedriquez Dumas versus Denis Tululin. But I don't even know what the reason was. It got postponed, so this fight's off. I was going to pick Dumas via decision. I thought he had the better grappling. I thought the striking was, I think both of them are kind of garbage strikers. But either way, it doesn't matter. It's postponed. We'll talk about that at a later date. Moving up on the card, a name that's very hard to pronounce. We have Magomed Gadzhiyasulov versus Brenson Ribeiro. This is a banger matchup. I'm really looking forward to this matchup. Gadzhiyasulov is nasty. He's got good grappling. He's got great kicks. He's got nasty power. He was on Dana White's Contender Series. The guy who fought Jose Medina was super tough. I'm surprised that he survived that fight, was getting ate up with kicks, was getting out-grappled, was getting brutalized. And then you have Brenson Ribeiro, who got brutally KO'd by Mingyang Zhang not that long ago, 3 months ago. But he's a savage, aggressive, nasty kicks, nasty power. But he's very hittable. He's very, very hittable. And I think that's what decides this fight here because they both have power. I know Ribeiro, you look at Ribeiro, he has a 5.5 inch or 6.5 inch reach advantage. No, 5.5 inch reach advantage. He has an inch height advantage. He is 27. He's fast. But he gets clipped up. He gets caught up on the chin. I picked him in his last fight, but I knew it was like a 50-50 shot. One of those guys were getting KO'd. I think Gadzhiyasulov is just overall better everywhere. I think he has better grappling. I think he can take Ribeiro down and out-grapple him if he needs to. And I think he's better on the feet as well. I think both of them have the ability to knock each other out. But I think what you're going to see is in the first round, I think Gadzhiyasulov is going to be a little bit more careful and look to counter and kind of back up a little bit to Ribeiro. Ribeiro is going to be looking for big shots and getting countered, maybe find a shot or two here or there. I think Gadzhiyasulov might start looking to mix in the grappling in the first round. I think second round, he starts to feel more comfortable. And I think Ribeiro gets clipped in the second round and gets brutally chinned. Gadzhiyasulov has nasty kicks, nasty leg kicks, nasty head kicks. And I really think he looks very promising. It's too early. He's 8-0. Hasn't fought the best level of opposition. outside the UFC, he was in Brave FC, Eagle FC, which I think is now defunct. But I think, you can watch certain guys against low-level opposition. You could be like, okay, I think they have promise. I think Magomed Gadzhiyasulov has decent promise, and I think Ribeiro will just walk into a big shot. So I'm going Gadzhiyasulov via second round KO. I just think his striking is too good. And even if he's getting boxed up on the feet, maybe the reach advantage is too much for him, I think he just mixes in the takedown. I think he'll easily be able to out-grapple Ribeiro, especially as the fight goes on and Ribeiro starts to get tired, because all he does is just move forward and look for kill shots nonstop. So while Ribeiro could maybe find a KO, I think he gets KO'd in the second round. I'm picking Gadzhiyasulov, second round KO. Moving up on the card, we have Muin Gafurov versus Kyung Kang. Honestly, this is one of those fights that could go either way. But I'm not picking a guy who got out-grappled by Ronnie Yaya. You know, I know that was 2.5 years ago, but since then, okay, he got to win over Bagher Aldana. After that, a win over Christian Quinones, won via submission there. Was actually getting touched up, and then Quinones got way too aggressive, got clipped, then lost to John Castaneda. Now, Gafurov lost to Said Nurmagomedov, not bad there. Also lost to John Castaneda. John Castaneda basically just bullied these guys in terms of stamina in both their fights, so they both lost to him. Doesn't have any wins in the UFC, was winning in LFA, but you know, I think Gafurov has a grappling advantage, and I also think Gafurov has big power to kind of make Kang not be as aggressive, because Kang has really good in and out movement, but he does get clipped on the chin quite a bit. He is there to be hit, and he also does slow down, where Gafurov does kind of slow down, but I think he has a little bit better stamina than Kang. But ultimately, you know, I'm worried about both their stamina. I think either one of these guys can win this fight, but I think Gafurov, with his nonstop pressure, with his grappling mixed in, with his big power, earning the respect of Kang, and Kang not being able to get off with his shots, I'm going to pick Gafurov to get it done. I'm going to pick him to get it done via decision. Kang's not super easy to finish, so I see Gafurov backing him up, shooting takedowns, landing big shots, mixing in the clinch. Kang is going to be looking to just kind of stay clean and use his striking. And basically, what this fight comes down to is if Kang can keep it really clean, he can use his footwork and avoid the pressure of Gafurov, I think he'll win the fight, kind of picking him apart from the outside. But I think Gafurov will be able to use his nonstop pressure, use his aggressiveness, use his grappling advantage, and that big power that he possesses. I think he can find some big shots on Kang's chin, possibly even put him to sleep, but I'm not going to count on that. So I'm gonna pick him to win a decision. I think this could be a close fight. I'm going to say 29-28 decision win for Muin Gafurov. Moving up on the card, we have Rinat Fakhretdinov versus Nicolas Dalby. I love this fight. I absolutely love this fight. This is a straight up banger on the prelims. You know, people always say, Joey, you criticize the UFC just because I'm not a shill for the UFC. I absolutely love this card that the UFC put together. Shout out to Saudi Arabia for paying them the big bucks to actually bring a decent card. This fight, you know, it's hard to count out Nicolas Dalby after what he did in his last fight against Gabriel Bonfim. Was getting clipped up early. Bonfim faded to the pressure of Dalby. And if there's anyone I'm suspicious of EPO, I'm suspicious of Dalby at this point. 39 years old, the way he looked against Gabriel Bonfim was highly alarming to me. Highly alarming to me. Rinat Fakhretdinov coming off a draw against Zaleski dos Santos. I think he thought he was going to get him out of there in those first two rounds. Started to fade, almost got finished in the third round. Got 10-8 in the third round, so it ended up being a draw. Before that, absolutely destroyed Kevin Lee. Before that, destroyed Brian Battle. Didn't get the finish there. Look, Nicolas Dalby's never been finished. He has never been finished. He has ridiculous cardio, but he can be out-grappled. And I think Rinat is kind of like a version of Khamzat Chimaev. He likes to be super aggressive. He likes to get guys out of there early. And sometimes if it doesn't happen, it can cost him in the later rounds. And that's what happened to him against Zaleski dos Santos. I don't think he's going to let that happen in this fight. I'm picking Rinat Fakhretdinov. And you know what? I think he's going to finish Dalby. I think he's going to take Dalby down. I think he's going to beat the fuck out of Dalby. Like have him stacked and guard and just smashing him with ground and pound. I think Dalby's so durable, I don't think he'll go out. But I think it'll be one of those stoppages where Rinat is just mauling him in the grappling, beating him up badly. Dalby can't get out of bad positions on the ground because Renat's grappling is so good. And I think eventually, I'm going to say second round ground and pound TKO for Rinat. The first guy to stop Nicolas Dalby. But also, I think Rinat has really good striking as well. It's kind of stiff, but it's super effective because he also has the threat of the takedowns as well. I don't see him going out there and like chinning Dalby like that, but I think he could have some success. But either way, I think the last fight is going to be a cautionary tale for him. So I think he goes out there, shoots takedowns on Dalby. We know Dalby doesn't have the best grappling. We've seen him out-grappled even in the Gabriel Bonfim fight. You know, we've seen him in the past be taken down and controlled a bit. Even though he's on a 4-fight winning streak, Muslim Salihov, Warley Alves, won a split decision against Warley Alves. That's not good. Winner over Claudio Silva. His last loss was against Tim Means. Dude lost to Tim Means 3 years ago, and now has had a career resurgence in his late 30s, and his cardio looks unbelievable. His combinations, his volume, and his stamina is the way he wins this fight. But I think the pressure will cost him. I think Rinat will be able to clip him up on the feet, and I think Rinat, most importantly, will mix in the takedowns and beat him up on the ground. I think eventually in the late second round, Rinat Fakhretdinov gets a second round ground and pound finish and beats Nicolas Dalby. Up on the card. Next fight on the card. Nasrat Haqparast versus Jared Gordon. I mean, is this really a hard pick? Maybe this comes back to bite me and I'm just dead wrong. I'm going Nasrat Haqparast. Jared Gordon's a guy who's been around forever. He's 35 years old. He's decent everywhere. Decent grappling, decent clinch work, decent striking. He beat Paddy Pimblett and was brutally robbed. I'll never forget that. His last fight, he beat Mark Madsen, got a brutal KO, chinned Madsen badly. Before that, got brutally finished by Bobby Green, but there was a head clash there that kind of precipitated that. His last win before the Mark Madsen KO was against Leonardo Santos. Lost before that against Grant Dawson. He doesn't really have any quality wins in the last few years. Even the Paddy Pimblett win wouldn't have been that good. Where you have Nasrat Haqparast, his last fight against Jamie Mullarkey, went out there and got it done. Finished Jamie Mullarkey, a.k.a. usage from Courage to Cowardly Dog, who's known for his durability. Before that, well, I know Jamie Mullarkey's been getting finished quite a bit, but Jamie Mullarkey was known for being durable. The fight before that, win against Landon Quinones, who's decent as well, has decent striking as well, fast, good kicks. And that was a competitive fight. Win over John McDessie, okay, fair enough, not that great. And then before that, I lost to Bobby Green, lost to Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker had to grapple him to beat him. That's how good Nasrat's boxing is. So I don't think Jared Gordon has that elite level wrestling that's going to be able to go out there and maul Nasrat in the grappling. Maybe he does, but at 35 years old, going on 36, slowing down, having the boxing disadvantage, I think Haqparast goes out there and puts a boxing clinic on him, beats him up. I just think Nasrat is way better on the feet. And I think, of course, Nasrat is so good in the striking. I think he's going to be nonstop training the grappling over the last couple of years. I think it's improved significantly since, you know, he was out grappled badly by Dan Hooker. So I think he comes out, stuffs the takedowns, lands more volume on the feet, maybe puts Jared Gordon away. I could see him putting Jared Gordon away. But Nasrat isn't known for like crazy one-punch KO power. So I'm going to pick Nasrat to get it done via decision. I'm going to say a 30-27 decision win for Nasrat Haqparast. Moving on to the featured prelim. Shara Magomedov, a.k.a. Shara Bullet Magomedov, versus Jalton Lutterbach. I mean, you know, what's funny is Lutterbach actually has some grappling, a little bit of grappling, but he's kind of been fighting in like karate and whatnot for his and Muay Thai in his last few fights. He's primarily a striker. You know, he hasn't fought an MMA fight in over a year. And he looks mediocre. Like his grappling is decent, and that's the way to beat Magomedov. Shara Bullet is undoubtedly the better striker here. And you look at Lutterbach's career, I mean, he's losing to Clay Collard. I know that was 3 years ago, but losing to Clay Collard, getting outstruck. I think he had some grappling success in that fight. But I think Magomedov is good enough in that first round where it doesn't matter about the grappling of Lutterbach. I think that Magomedov's kicks are unbelievable. I think especially early, his takedown defense is okay, even though he has no wrestling from the bottom. I think against Bruno Silva, he got up one time. But I think ultimately he gets Lutterbach out of there in the first round. The kicks are unbelievable. The dynamic ability, you know, throw a head kick, then throw a flying knee. Lightning fast. Good hands as well. And I think Bruno Silva, I don't know if I want to say Bruno Silva is better than Lutterbach, but arguably he is. So unless Lutterbach comes out here with a super heavy game plan to just grapple nonstop, you know, does he beat Shara Bullet? I don't think so. And even if he does, I feel like Shara has to slow down before the grappling will be effective from Lutterbach. So maybe Lutterbach could win like a 29-28, like second and third round. But Magomedov's nasty off bottom too. The elbows, the shots that he lands from off bottom reminds me of Tony Ferguson back in the day against Danny Castillo. Throws a lot of elbows off the bottom, makes it uncomfortable to chill in his guard. And he's got to be working on his grappling. You know, he's one of these Dagestani guys, you know, from the Caucasus region who, random enough, is a striker compared to the, you know, normal grapplers that come from that region. And I think he's working on his grappling nonstop. I'm sure he's training with a lot of really good grapplers. His striking is already so good. His kicking game is already so good. I think he comes out in this fight and gets a highlight reel KO. I'm picking Shara Magomedov, first round KO, head kick KO. It's going to be a filthy highlight reel finish for Shara Magomedov. I just don't think Lutterbach is going to go out there and be good enough. I'm watching his fights. He looks mediocre. He looks mediocre at best. And I know he's had success in other organizations and he's held belts in other organizations and he competes in Muay Thai and competes in karate, but I just don't think he's that good overall in MMA. And I think Shara gets him out of there in the first round with a highlight reel head kick KO. Moving on to the main card. First fight on the main card, Johnny Walker versus Volkan Oezdemir. This is a banger in the light heavyweight division. This could go either way. And I flipped and flopped back and forth on this fight. But ultimately, I'm going with Johnny Walker. I've picked Volkan Oezdemir in the past because I've been kind of high on him, and I thought, you look at his resume, I think he gets underrated quite a bit because you look at his losses, okay? He lost to Nikita Krylov. I think Nikita Krylov could beat Alex Pereira right now, okay? Nikita Krylov's very good. He lost to Magomedov Ankalaev. Magomedov Ankalaev's right up there at the top of the division right now. Other loss before that, Yuri Prochazka got brutally KO'd. One of his other losses in his career, Daniel Cormier in his prime. And that's the only two times he's been TKO'd or KO'd was Daniel Cormier and Yuri Prochazka. So Volkan Oezdemir has a really good chin. Johnny Walker has no chin. And Oezdemir can get, and it's weird because both of them have the strength. Oezdemir can generate power in like weird short shots in the clinch. We've seen him do it in the past plenty of times. Johnny Walker's done the same. I'll never forget him like KOing Khalil Roundtree in the clinch. But what I think this fight comes down to is I think Johnny Walker's faster, more athletic, longer, rangier. You look at Johnny Walker, 6'6", 4-inch height advantage over Oezdemir. You look at his reach, 82.5-inch reach compared to 75-inch reach. So you're looking at a 7.5-inch reach advantage for Johnny Walker. He's 32 years old. Oezdemir's 34 years old, going on 35, where Johnny Walker just turned 32. So I'm looking at this fight, and I'm thinking, okay, I could see Oezdemir going out there and chinning him. But I'm thinking Walker's just going to go out there. He knows that his chin is kind of his issue here. He got brutalized in his last fight against Ankalaev. Fight before that was that accidental illegal knee. Before that, beat Anthony Smith, who's a dead body, went to decision with Anthony Smith, so not a great win. Before that, a KO over Paul Craig. Paul Craig's a dead body as well. Before that, beat Iwan Kutalaba, I think is how you pronounce it. Dead body as well. So my brain is telling me to pick Volkan Oezdemir, but my gut is telling me to pick Johnny Walker just for being younger, more athletic, longer, rangier, and just more dynamic on the feet. I think Oezdemir's starting to slow down. So even though I question Walker's chin and I could see Oezdemir getting a KO win here, I'm going to pick Johnny Walker. I'm going to pick Johnny Walker to win via decision. I think he's going to play it safe. I think he knows his chin's a liability. I think he's going to be super cautious not to get clipped and KO'd. I think he's going to win this fight via decision. Use leg kicks from range, lots of feints like he did in the Thiago Santos fight. I think Johnny Walker gets the win here just purely based on speed and athleticism. I think he's going to be very comfortably conservative in this fight. Not remember Alistair Overeem kind of later in his career when he knew his chin was gone? That's how Johnny Walker, I think, is going to fight in this fight, especially coming off a KO loss. Maybe he gets some of that confidence back. He starts fighting a little bit more crazy, but I think in the first round, he'll throw some crazy techniques, but he can do it because that massive reach advantage and massive height advantage. So I think that advantage is going to play out well for him in this fight, and I think he gets it done via decision. I could also see him. He has brutal KO power as well, flying knees, nasty kicks. He doesn't really put together a lot of technical striking combinations, but I think he beats Volkan Oezdemir. I think Volkan Oezdemir might try to mix in the clinch and grappling to no avail. I think Johnny Walker's too fast, too athletic, good footwork, and I think he gets it done via decision, similar to how he beat Anthony Smith, where it wasn't like super impressive, but he's able to just kind of, land the more damaging shots and avoid big shots landing on his chin, putting him to sleep. I'm picking Johnny Walker to win via decision. I'm going to say maybe Oezdemir gets one round. I'm going to say 29-28 decision win for Johnny Walker. Up on the card, next fight on the card, Muhammad Naimov versus Felipe Lima. This fight was just added to the card not that long ago. I went and watched a little bit of Felipe Lima's fights. He's fought in 5-round fights. He was a champion in another organization. I think it's Octagon. And in his last fight, I'll tell you right now, dude's a straight up cheater. Was grabbing the fence, was knee into the spine. He's lucky he didn't get DQ'd from his last fight. And I think it was for the belt. It was for the belt. But Naimov is very similar in the fight against Nathaniel Wood, grabbing the fence, knees to the groin. So both of these guys are kind of, those guys, if they were to fight Jamal Hill and beat him, he would be complaining for years because there would be those kind of fouls that don't really get penalized but happen, groin shots, fence grabs and this and that. Felipe actually got pulled off the fence because he was holding the fence brutally and the ref warned him. But overall, I don't think Lima's that good. He's going to try to grapple nonstop. Naimov's strong in the clinch, strong in the grappling, has nasty power in his hands, super aggressive, has decent cardio for as aggressive as he is in the early rounds. I think Naimov gets this done. I think Lima's going to try to grapple nonstop. I don't like Lima's striking all that much. I don't think it's that good. It's not horrible. Like, it's not Juliana Miller level, but it's not great. And I think Naimov has really good striking. I mean, his last fight finished Eric Silva in the first round. Now, granted, it was a leg injury, but he was landing up until that point. Before that, hurt Nathaniel Wood multiple times. Ended up getting hurt badly in the third round and almost finished, but still survived 29-28 decision win there. Beat Jamie Malarkey, was one of the first guys to finish Jamie Malarkey. And if I'm not misremembering, I think that was short notice for him. And I just think Muhammad Naimov is better everywhere. I think he could out-grapple Felipe Lima. I don't think Felipe Lima is going to come in on short notice. I don't know if he was training for a fight or not, but I don't think he's going to come in on short notice and be able to beat a guy like Muhammad Naimov, who's got big power, super aggressive, good grappling, good anti-grappling, and overall just strong everywhere. I think he's a really good featherweight prospect. People thought Nathaniel Wood was a good prospect. Muhammad Naimov went out there and was bodying him in the grappling, landing on the feet, hurting him. And then up until the third round when he got tired and got clipped himself, that's the only real bad moment in his UFC career so far. At least is what I'm remembering right now off the top of my head. So I think Naimov goes out there, stuffs the takedowns of Lima, maybe even uses some of Lima's entries into taking him down and beating him up a little bit. And I think Naimov's going to find a KO. I'm picking Muhammad Naimov via second round KO. Lima's going to be coming in, desperation takedown after desperation takedown. He's going to get clipped with something, whether it's an uppercut, a knee, or he just starts getting sloppy and shucked off, and then Naimov presses him and KOs him up against the fence. I'm picking Muhammad Naimov in this fight, and I'm pretty confident in Naimov. Moving up on the card. Featured fight on the main card, we have Kelvin Gastelum versus Daniel Rodriguez. This is good matchmaking by the UFC. It's crazy to see Kelvin Gastelum has fallen this far. He's fighting unranked guys at welterweight and Daniel Rodriguez. Daniel Rodriguez on a 2-fight losing streak, 37 years old, got KO'd by Ian Machado Gary in his last fight, which was a year ago. Before that, lost to Neil Magny, got Darce choked, got out-grappled and Darce choked there. Kelvin Gastelum's coming off that loss against Sean Brady, who's a top 10 welterweight right now. Before that, Gastelum went over Chris Curtis, arguably lost that fight. There was a head clash, there was some controversy there. Before that, a loss to Jared Cannonier. Before that, a loss to Robert Whittaker. Before that, a win over Ian Heinisch. So Gastelum doesn't even really have a great win over the last, like a real statement performance over the last few years. And at one point in time, this is the only guy to bring it to Adesanya, I think something along those lines in his YouTube intro. Kelvin Gastelum's kind of fallen off, and so is Daniel Rodriguez. Both of these guys want to strike. Neither one particularly puts any emphasis on the grappling. Kelvin Gastelum used to back in the day, but not really. I think in this matchup, you have to go Kelvin Gastelum. I think he's younger. He's 32 years old, 37 for Daniel Rodriguez. I know Rodriguez has a little bit of a height and reach advantage. I think Gastelum has the crisper boxing. You also have to take into account over a year off for Daniel Rodriguez, coming off a head kick KO loss. I think Gastelum's going to be cleaner on the feet. I think Gastelum can mix in the grappling if he wants to and be the superior grappler to Daniel Rodriguez, even though I don't suspect he will. Gastelum's always been a guy who likes to keep it standing and box. So I just see Gastelum just boxing him up. I think Rodriguez could have some moments, but I think Gastelum's just going to be the superior striker, land good combinations, and go out there and get a win. I'm worried, is there going to be some weight-cutting controversy for Kelvin Gastelum in this fight? But outside of that, I think Gastelum's the better fighter. I think Daniel Rodriguez is on a downturn as well. And I think it's more significant to Kelvin Gastelum's downturn. And you're looking at their most recent fights. I understand they both fought really good competition, Ian Machado Gary and Sean Brady. But I just think Gastelum, he really drew a short straw against Sean Brady, where he's just getting out-grappled badly in the welterweight division, coming back down to welterweight, where Daniel Rodriguez, he's getting Ian Machado Gary, who's a striker. Daniel Rodriguez likes to strike, and he gets brutally chinned. I just think that's not going to be great for his confidence. And it's not like Gastelum's going to have to worry about the grappling coming from Rodriguez. So it's going to be a purely striking matchup. Gastelum has the grappling advantage, in my opinion, if it does come to that. And I think Gastelum is going to be better on the feet. I think he's going to be faster on the feet. I think he arguably has more power as well. When's the last time Daniel Rodriguez has knocked somebody out? He went to a split decision with Li Jingliang, decision against Kevin Lee. Preston Parsons 3 years ago was the last time he got a KO. And Kelvin Gastelum has a granite chin. So I don't see Daniel Rodriguez getting this done in any way, shape, or form unless Kelvin Gastelum just comes in and he's completely checked out. But Kelvin Gastelum never quits in any fight, even when he's losing badly. He's going to decision with Jared Cannonier, going to decision with Robert Whittaker on short notice. Daniel Rodriguez is not going to get him out of there. And if that's the case, I think Kelvin Gastelum handedly wins a decision. So I'm picking Kelvin Gastelum to win via like a 30-27 decision. Moving on, co-main event, Sergei Pavlovich versus Alexander Volkov. What a heavyweight matchup in the co-main event. I love this Saudi Arabia card, guys. This Saudi Arabia card's amazing. I'm going Sergei Pavlovich via first round KO. He always gets it done via first round KO. I mean, Curtis Blades, first round KO. Tai Tuivasa, first round KO. Derek Lewis, first round KO. Shamil Abdurakhimov, first round KO. I just butchered that last name. I think his striking is really good. We don't know about his grappling, but Volkov doesn't mix in the grappling. I think Volkov is the overall better mixed martial artist, but I think in heavyweight, it doesn't matter. If you're the physicality and the power and imposing your will on your opponent. And I think Pavlovich can do that. I think Pavlovich kind of got screwed over in a way having to fight Tom Aspinall on short notice. And I know you could say he was training as a backup, but still, going from potentially fighting John Jones or Stipe Miocic to going fighting Tom Aspinall is a big difference. And at heavyweight, one shot changes the whole fight. He even landed some shots on Aspinall's chin. And then he just got caught and got brutally KO'd by Tom Aspinall in an interim title fight. Where Alexander Volkov's coming in on a 3-fight winning streak. Tai Tuivasa submitted him there. Alexander Romanov beat him up. Alexander Romanov gassed out in like 1 minute. Before that, beat up Jairzinho Rosenstruck. Before that, lost to Tom Aspinall. Before that, beat Marcin Tybura. Look, I think Volkov is improving drastically, and I think it's impressive. I think his grappling, he's mixing in his grappling a little bit. I think he has a more diverse attack on the feet. I mean, I went back and looked, and I can't remember if it was 1 or I think it was 0. Pavlovich has never thrown a kick in the UFC. At least as far as what I'm remembering. Maybe it might have been 1, but I don't think he's ever thrown a kick in the UFC. So Pavlovich primarily relies on his boxing, and I think he's got really good boxing in a heavyweight. It just takes one shot. Volkov is hittable. He's got good striking. He's got a crazy reach, but even, as being as tall as he is, he's got a reach disadvantage in this fight. 4-inch reach advantage for Pavlovich. And that's crazy because Volkov has a 4-inch height advantage. So you have Pavlovich who relies on his boxing, has decent takedown defense. Volkov doesn't have great offensive wrestling. I have to go Pavlovich in this fight. I'm picking him via first round KO. I see Pavlovich either getting like a first or second round KO, but it has to be first round. He's always getting first round KOs. If he's putting Curtis Blades out in the first round, putting Tai Tuivasa out in the first round, putting Derek Lewis out in the first round, I think he can put Volkov out in the first round. And I know Volkov is better than most of those guys, maybe outside of Curtis Blades, but I don't think Pavlovich even has to worry about the threat of the takedown. I just see Pavlovich going in there and muscling him. If Volkov shoots in on a takedown, I see Pavlovich just shucking him off, beating him up, and finding that kill shot, roughing him up on the feet with big combinations and big power punches. And I'm picking Sergei Pavlovich to get it done via first round KO over Alexander Volkov. Moving on, main event, Robert Whittaker versus Ikram Aliskerov. Let me go on a little rant before I get into my actual prediction. Fuck all the people who are crying, undeserved shot for Ikram Aliskerov. Oh my God, it's undeserved. It's a Dagestani privilege. That is the stupidest fucking argument that I've ever heard. I went through this in a previous video. This is short notice. What about flying halfway across the world after you were already scheduled to fight last weekend? Maybe you already started your weight cut. What about flying halfway across the world to restart your weight cut and push your fight back a week against one of the elite middleweights and one of the best middleweights of all time? What about that is a privilege? What about that is a bonus? On short notice, no training camp for this guy. I don't get it at all, because if he loses this fight, if Ikram loses this fight, he's just going to be called a fraud. He's an unranked guy taking an opportunity on short notice. And now it's like privilege. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I can't even fathom acting like this is somehow, and I get it that it's a good opportunity, but this is somehow like some gift. If he gets brutally finished by Robert Whittaker, all it's going to be is he's exposed. He's a fraud. He doesn't deserve a big opportunity. People won't remember that at short notice. So I hate that people are crying about this main event. I love this main event. I love when you take a guy who's either low in the rankings or outside the rankings and you throw him in against a top-ranked guy. I know people say, Joey, you're always crying about meritocracy. When it comes to title shots, what I like about title shots is if there's an undeserved guy getting a title, well, not what this isn't what I like, but what I hate about certain title shots is, and what I cry about meritocracy with, is if there's a guy who's getting an undeserved title shot, meanwhile there's multiple people who do deserve it, that's what I get annoyed about. The rankings don't matter. Ikram has a lot of hype behind him, and if it's going to be a short notice fight and he's willing to accept it, let's ship him over to Saudi Arabia, because granted, he doesn't live in Saudi Arabia. I know for some people crying this, they think, oh, there's sand there, so that means his whole family lives there. That's just not true. So I think this is one of those opportunities where we get a banger matchup. We get to test a guy who's got a lot of hype behind him. And it sucks that it's on short notice because now either guy kind of has an out. But regardless, if Robert Whittaker goes out there and starches Ikram, I think it's a good win. If Ikram goes out there and starches Robert Whittaker on short notice, it's even crazier win. But there always will be that, oh, well, what if it wasn't short notice? But I wanted to get that little rant out of the way. Great fight, great matchmaking by the UFC putting this together. Now, in terms of a prediction, I see a world where Ikram Aliskerov can get this done. He's big, he's strong, he's physically imposing, he has good power. But how can I pick him when he's beat up Warlley Alves and beat up Phil Hawes in the UFC? I know he's 15-1. I know his only loss is to Khamzat Chimaev. But at the same time, Phil Hawes was looking good up until he got KO'd, was landing good body kicks, was landing good combinations. Ikram is hittable. Now, I was going to pick Khamzat Chimaev to buzzsaw through Robert Whittaker. I could not forget the way Dricus du Plessis in that end of the first round, throwing Robert Whittaker, just tossing him like a little bitch and then beating him up on the ground. I was going to pick Khamzat to do the same thing, beat him up and probably sub him. I just don't have that access to high-level opposition for Ikram yet. You know, at least Khamzat beat Gilbert Burns, beat Kamaru Usman, beat up Kevin Holland, who is kind of a scrub, but at least he's decent. Where Ikram's knocking out the chinny Phil Hawes, beating up Warlley Alves, who was a sacrificial lamb. So while I do believe Ikram could surprise us here, and maybe I would flirt with picking him even more if it wasn't short notice, I'm not picking him to get it done where he's supposed to fight, Anton Tricoli last week, some scrub that he was going to destroy, and now all of a sudden, on short notice, he's taking on Robert Whittaker. But I do think he does have a style to beat Whittaker. Large, strong, powerful, physically imposing. Basically how Dricus du Plessis won. I don't think Dricus is the more skilled fighter than Robert Whittaker. I just think he was those things. He imposed his will, hurt him with a jab, and then never let him off the hook. I think Ikram could do that, but I'm not picking him in a 5-round fight on short notice. I have to go with Robert Whittaker in this fight. Robert Whittaker has really crisp combinations. He's not particularly young. He's not particularly old. He's not particularly young. He's 33 years old. He's a former champion. He's coming off a win over Paulo Costa, which isn't great. I get it. Paulo Costa is on a downslide. Lost his last fight. Looked like shit against Sean Strickland, and Sean Strickland looked like shit against him. Lost to Dricus. Beat Marvin Vettori. Outclassed him. Lost to Israel Adesanya. I think Robert Whittaker is he's just too good. And he was training to fight Khamzat Chimaev. I'm sure he's going to be ready to stuff any takedowns from Ikram because Ikram's pretty good on the ground as well. But I think what you're going to see is Ikram hunting the KO and getting kind of picked apart a little bit by Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker loves where he'll throw a jab and then a right high kick, or he'll throw the right hand and throw the right high kick behind it. It's a combination that he throws all the time. I see Ikram getting frustrated, looking for takedowns, maybe not finding those takedowns, getting clipped up on the feet while he's looking for big power shots. And unless he starts finding some of those power shots and changing the trajectory of the fight, I think Robert Whittaker is going to cruise to a decision. I see the first 2 rounds, Ikram having some success and finding some good shots and mixing in the grappling. But as the fight goes on, I think Whittaker's going to pull out ahead. And I think Ikram has to find a finish. And also, you look at Ikram's fights, KO, submission. Okay, his last decision was 2.5 years ago, and that was a 3-round fight. So before that, submission. So he's not been in a lot of long, grueling fights. So I don't know what his stamina is going to look like. I don't know what he's going to look like in 5 rounds, let alone 5 rounds against one of the best middleweights in the world. So if we had some more data, we had some access to him fighting elite level opposition, I would consider picking him. And I can see him chinning Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker, I think the narrative is a little bit overblown, but I do think Robert Whittaker is a bit chinny. So if he finds one of those big shots, sure, maybe he puts Whittaker out. But I'm watching Phil Hawes beat up the body. I'm watching Phil Hawes land some good shots on the feet. Now, I know inevitably Phil Hawes got chinned. I think that's how this fight would go down. I could see Robert Whittaker landing early, landing off, and then looking like he's pulling out ahead and then getting chinned. But I think Whittaker's just super prepared, was training for Khamzat Chimaev, who's an absolute savage in his own right. And I just think Ikram's coming in underprepared and not ready to fight one of these guys who was the top of the middleweight division on short notice for 5 rounds when he was supposed to fight last week and already starting his weight cut. So I'm picking Robert Whittaker to win via decision. I could see Ikram getting the KO, but ultimately just can't pick him right now with the body of work that he currently has when Whittaker's just fighting so many good guys. Paulo Costa, which I know isn't great, but Dricus du Plessis, the current champion. Marvin Vettori, who's mediocre but decent. Israel Adesanya, Kelvin Gastelum. And I know some of those names have fallen off, but they're night and day compared to Warlley Alves. So I'm picking Robert Whittaker to get it done. I could see Ikram getting an early KO, first or second round KO for Ikram if he does get it done. But I'm picking Robert Whittaker to win via decision. I could also see Robert Whittaker, depending on Ikram's cardio, I could see Robert Whittaker getting like a 4th or 5th round TKO as well if Ikram gasses out looking for a finish or gasses out spamming takedowns and getting stuffed. But ultimately, I'm picking Robert Whittaker to get it done. I'm going to say 49-46 decision. Maybe Ikram gets like the 1st or 2nd round, lands a big shot, kind of wobbles Robert Whittaker, but he survives and comes back to win the fight by decision. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for watching.